Caroline stumbled through the mudroom and into the great room with its high-beamed ceiling, memories of the old house guiding her toward the small bedroom in the back. Her mind registered the changes her mother had made in the 13 years since Caroline had been there. As she passed through the back of the house, she saw that the pale pink walls were now painted a neutral cream, and the thin metal blinds had been replaced with wooden plantation shutters. After her parents' divorce and her father's move to the West Coast, Margaret's career as an interior designer had progressed by astonishing degrees. She'd even had a living room featured in Atlanta Home magazine. Unfortunately, during the remodeling of her childhood vacation home, Caroline had been forced to listen to the things that were being removed from the lake house and of the new, seemingly improved items that were taking their places. It had been like a debridement of an infected wound to speed healing. Yet it had always seemed to Caroline to be more like putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. She hadn't returned to see the wreckage. Caroline looked with some surprise at her old room. It was unchanged, even down to the rose-colored chenille bedspread and the big yellow dog Jude had won for her at a long-ago Harvest Moon festival. It still had the smear on the faded yellow of its cheek where ketchup had dripped from her brother's hot dog as he'd tried to show her how he could shove it into his mouth in one bite. She absently stroked the dog's head as she glanced around at the old, unpainted pine furniture with pink drawer pulls and the plastic beaded ropes that hung in front of her closet door. Caroline had thought them cool and magical, but her mother considered them tacky and not appropriate for their Atlanta home. But they'd been a Christmas gift from Jude, so they were allowed to hang in her closet at the lake house, where it wasn't possible for anyone who mattered to know that Margaret Collier allowed hippie beads into her home. Caroline heard her mother gently open and shut the screened door before the tapping of her heels across the pine floors marked her passage to the kitchen. Silverware clinked on the wood surface of the kitchen table, followed by the sound of the oven door screeching open. She's baking the steaks with the chicken breast. Caroline stifled a grin at her mother's ineptitude with the outdoor grill and lifted the hippie beads, listening to them clack against the pale white closet door frame. "Dinner's ready," her mother called out. She wanted to say she wasn't hungry, but her stomach grumbled as she stuck her head out the door. Glancing back into her room, she spotted her now empty suitcase sitting against the wall near the dresser and remembered how there had once been 2 twin beds in the room. The second bed had been moved to the adjacent bedroom at her own insistence when she was 12 and much too old to be sharing a room with a brother who was 11 months younger than her. "Coming," she said, taking a deep breath and counting slowly to 10 before heading for the kitchen. She'd stick to safe topics like the weather and the cost of milk. The soft notes of a Chopin prelude drifted through the great room from tiny Bose speakers poised inconspicuously behind a large fern and a framed child's pastel drawing, the telltale scrawl of Jude's signature blasted across the bottom in blue crayon. She scanned the walls quickly for the Andrew Wyeth print she'd given her mother for Christmas the previous year, and felt the familiar stab of disappointment when she didn't see it. She let her fingers slide over the closed top of the piano and wondered briefly why her mother still kept it. Walking toward the kitchen, she heard the first drops of rain against the skylights. Rainstorms in the mountains always caught you by surprise, like jumping into cold water on a hot day. She watched her mother toss the salad, studying her in her high heels and apron for a moment before she became aware of Caroline's presence. Margaret Collier had one of those faces that seemed to get better with age. Instead of filling out and sagging, her skin had tightened over beautiful bones, sharpening her nose and her chin. It was as if life had shrunk her somehow, made her more compact and better able to duck the sharp winds life had a habit of blowing at you. Her mother turned her head and smiled, her makeup fresh and perfect. Caroline couldn't think of a time she'd seen her without makeup. Even Christmas morning, her mother never appeared downstairs without at least powder, eyeliner, and her signature red lipstick. Jude used to say that he wasn't sure if he'd recognize her without it.